Hello everyone, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Hope you're all doing well. I was going to do Delphi case today, geofencing, but I'll do that tomorrow because I've got an opportunity to talk about Summer Wells. Summer Wells has been missing since the 15th of June 2021. She was 5 years old at the time. She's now 8 years old. If she's still with us alive in this world, she is 8 years old. It's crazy how time flies, and summer has missed another summer. We're nearly in autumn or fall for you guys in the US, and still no sight, no sound of Summer Wells. So it has been a month since I last talked about Summer's case, and a case that's over 3 years old where there's no updates from law enforcement. It's difficult to talk about regularly because you end up going over the same things again and again and again, and that's not good for anyone, is it? And as newer cases come along and they take the limelight, I have still got an eye on the cases that I've been covering for any length of time. So whenever there's something that allows me to talk about a case like Summers, I will grab it with both hands. And on Vinnie Politan's show, so Vinnie Politan from Court TV, he does a nightly program now called Vinnie Politan Investigates. And last night it was Summer Wells. He did Summer Wells. So I watched with interest. I didn't watch it while it was, live. I caught it on the replay, as I always do, because I'm ahead of the US. So I'm generally asleep when these things happen. But I watched it this morning. So I thought it would give us an opportunity to go through it. He had a bunch of guests on. So we're going to go through it. If you've already seen it, then you can let me know what you think as we go through. Let's say a couple of hellos first, though. Karen, yeah. Mike, yeah, the weather's good here as well. It was a bit chilly this morning, but it's warm now. But ask me again in an hour and it'll probably be raining or something. Hello, Susan. Down under with love. Good evening to you. Your local grandmummy. Hello, hello. We've got Mandy. Yeah, I agree. The Tangent podcast that Vinnie does is very good. I enjoy that. It's on a Friday, isn't it? A Friday. I do enjoy that. The guests, the two tangents, I do find quite amusing. But I think the issue with Vinnie and Court TV as a whole is that they play it very safe. They have to, right? They play it very safe. But I would like Vinnie to open his mind a little bit. Sometimes he's made his mind up. And when he's made his mind up, he sticks with the same guests. The Vinnie and the Delphi case that we talked about the other day with Murder Sheet, every time Court TV does Delphi, they bring out the Murder Sheet. Yeah, okay, whatever. That's right, yeah. I think it's Vinnie. I think Vinnie gets locked and then they just invite the same guest. I don't know whether Vinnie has his choice on which guest to invite. I assume he does, given it's his show, and he ad-libs a lot. It's not scripted, is it? I mean, I understand that the questions that he asks probably will be, but he does ad-lib quite a lot. Hello, Sirius Black and Karen R, who's got a meeting. Oh dear, work meeting, never good. Hello, Angie Baby. Krista, thank you so much for the 1999 super sticker. That is so kind of you. Thank you. Hello, CW. Hope you're doing well. And all right, I'm gonna call it there. Kelly, Vicky. Remember to smash that like button. Yeah, please do. It just helps. Right, it's not an ego boost for me to see loads and loads of likes. It tells YouTube that people are engaging with the video, with the live stream, and it just boosts it in the algorithm. That goes for the replay viewers as well. Smash that like button. You know, it just pushes it up in the algorithm. Also sharing videos, clicking on the share button and sharing it to any social media you've got, Facebook groups, Twitter page, whatever you do. That helps as well, because just clicking on that share tells YouTube that there's engagement, and it just pushes it up that little bit in the algorithm. And we all need that. We all need that. Oh, I didn't keep up with this case. He started watching me. Well, I've been on the Summer Wells case since the beginning. Followed it from June 16th. My channel was quite new then. June 16th. So I can't remember which channel it was now. Can't remember. But they were talking about Summer and they were playing the press conference. So it was the June 16th press conference. So I watched all the press conferences, and then Summer had been missing about 2 weeks. And I thought, it's time to jump in here. So I made my first video on Summer, and we're now heading towards 600 videos. By far, you know, of all the cases that I've covered, Summer is by far the one that I've covered the most. Because there's been, you know, when Don Wells was on different channels nightly, it was easy to talk about Summer, even though you know, law enforcement and official updates were few and far between after the first, you know, the acute search. It was easy to talk about Summer and talk about all the different theories, and it's not so much anymore, you know, or else we'd just go over the same things again and again and again, and then, you know, other cases would suffer, obviously. So this is why we're here today. Kyle's just come in from the gym. So there's going to be dogs. He's going to be coming upstairs. All right, which layout shall I choose? All right, that one will do. All right, so this is from Court TV. The link to this is in the description box already. It's already had 41,000 views. So Summer's case is still pushing up there in the old views. You found me on June 17th. Been a member since. Wow, June 17th, 2021. Blue Willow, wow. Angie Baby was with me since the Chris Watts days. Yeah. Yeah, I was just coming to the end of the Chris Watts case, because I wasn't doing daily videos. I was doing maybe 2 or 3 videos a week on this channel. And I remember when I first started covering Summer, I was in the process of doing like the big movie, like putting everything together. It's called Endgame. It's the most popular video by far on my channel. It was like a movie length overview of the Watts case. And I was coming to the end, because when I started this channel, I started with Chris Watts, and I did a few other cases, like just short videos, but it was mainly Chris Watts, because I had all the discovery, I had all the body cams, I had everything from Weld County. Weld County sheriffs just give you like 50 gigabytes worth of information, like literally fills up your hard drive. So I had it all. So when I started this channel, I just went through everything and, you know, picked up different theories and did his letters and his prison correspondence, all sorts of things, all different ways to go through the entire discovery. So when Summer's case came along, I was just about to the end of that. Like I wasn't going to make many more Chris Watts videos. You know, I had the movie, The Endgame, and then I think I probably did a few after that, but not many, because I'd done everything that I wanted to say about Chris Watts. So Summer came along, and then shortly after that, it was Gabby Petito and Brian Laundrie. And yeah, so I think I gathered a lot of people from Summer. I gathered people from Gabby. I gathered people from, you know, every case you gather some people. But anyway, all right. Without further ado, now I'm not starting it right at the beginning. I'm starting 5 minutes in, because Vinnie does an overview and introduction. So we've got Chris McDonough. Lots of people will recognize Chris McDonough. I used to do a few live streams back then. It was mainly recorded videos. I used to do the occasional live stream. I mean, I do a lot of live streams now. But I think it's because we've got a nice community here now. You know, when you're a new channel, if you do a live stream, you're basically talking to a bunch of strangers. And many of you, I don't consider you strangers anymore. You know, I talk to you regularly. So it's easier to do live streams and, you know, whatever. But I do still do recorded videos, and I have a nice mix now on this channel. I know some people like the live streams, other people prefer the shorter recorded videos, but, you know, try to do both. Children do go off with strangers. They do, sadly. Oh, at the age of 6, you did? No way. No way. No way. The weasels. Yeah, Dawn, the weasels. All right, so let's start this off. So we've got Chris McDonough, and they play quite a bit of Chris McDonough's footage. You know, when he met with Candice. They both passed polygraphs, they did. Not that that means too much, because they're not admissible in court. They're just an indicator. They're a tool, you know, because if somebody fails a polygraph, then it gives the cops ammo. It gives the cops something to, you know, challenge them on and keep them talking. If they pass polygraphs, obviously there's a lot less ways they can use it. Oh, CW, my eldest wandered off when he was 5, very similar to Michael Vaughan's situation. I was busy and he snuck out. Luckily, he was found pretty quickly. My cousin used to do that. My cousin was an eloper. He used to jump out of windows and all sorts of things and then run off. Yeah, you literally had to have eyes at the back of your head with my cousin. Some kids are, you know, they just don't see the danger at all. You don't believe they passed polys? Well, Sheriff Ronnie Lawson said they did. So, you know, we can only go by what we've been told by law enforcement. That was Sheriff Lawson being interviewed by Brian Enton. When Brian Enton went to Tennessee, Brian Enton asked him straight, and he said, yeah, they passed polygraphs. So what can you do? Why would law enforcement lie? What gain would law enforcement have in lying to the public? Anyhow, all right, so we're starting 5 minutes in. He's just about to introduce Chris McDonough and this dude here. So he's a PI. And then he has another couple of other guests on. So let me know you can hear this all right. I think it'll be okay.
All right, Jason Jensen, you've investigated so many cases like this. Where are you starting? What strikes you about the attempt to get to the truth here and get to the answer of where she could be?
Yeah, Vinnie, the most important thing is to keep an open mind. Like the director just said, is they don't know which theory. There's really basically only 3 things that can happen in a disappearance involving a small child like that. Either a wander off, or an abduction, or a death and concealment. They've ruled out the death and concealment pretty much by doing the polygraphs with the parents, and they both passed. So we're really focusing.
Well, all right. I don't think that necessarily rules out the parents. Not necessarily. I mean, look, they'd all have to be really, really good liars for them all to pass. If they were all lying, like Don, Candice, and Grandma all took polygraphs. But, you know, sometimes people, you know, there are strategies that people can use in order to fool a polygraph. I don't think they're as easy to fool as people think. I think it's easier to get a false negative rather than a false positive. Like I think it's easier for a polygraph to, you know, for you to fail a polygraph and you be completely innocent because you're so nervous. You know, if you're really nervous and you're being, you know, just triggered by the questions, even if the polygraph has been calibrated and the polygrapher's good I think sometimes false negatives happen because an innocent person is so triggered. Like Tyler Vaughan, Michael Vaughan's dad, failed 2 polygraphs, I believe. And, you know, obviously he was interrogated. They knew the timeline though. Like, luckily for Tyler, Tyler was on camera at the splash pad. You know, they knew where Tyler was at 7 p.m. They also knew that neighbours saw Michael at like 20 to 7. So in that 20-minute window, Michael was abducted. So Tyler, you know, the neighbours corroborated that Michael was alive. And then Tyler was right there on CCTV at the splash pad looking for Michael. So how can you possibly murder a child, conceal the body, and just fool everybody in 20 minutes? That would be incredibly unlikely. So the cops knew that the family were innocent, but Tyler failed polygraphs. The reason I believe why he failed was because he was so guilty that Michael disappeared on his watch. And because Michael disappeared on his watch, questions like, did you have anything to do with Michael's disappearance? Well, he would answer no, but his brain would be telling him, yeah, I did, because he would be blaming himself. So I think the cops understood that. So I think false negatives are more likely than false positives. But there are strategies, there are things that people do to pass a polygraph, to fool a polygraph. But could all 3 of them do that? I don't know. All right, but when they say, oh well, they passed a polygraph, therefore they got to be innocent, they most likely probably are. However, we do have to just have that caveat.
On whether this child wandered off, got lost, and something happened to the child. That's why they did the mile radius search and then find her. So, you know, there's a real possibility of the abduction. And you got to keep your mind open, because we do know that this situation does occur. Like, I have a case, the 1982 case of Rachel Runyon. She was abducted 15 feet from behind her home. So it can happen.
Let me ask you, Chris.
It absolutely does happen. That case, Rachel Runyon, I did her case for Cold Case Christmas. Hold on, let me get it up. Cold Case Christmas 2 years ago. I'll be doing Cold Case Christmas again this year for anybody who enjoys the series. It's over on my other channel, Michelle Walks. Hold on, just let me. I'm sure I did. I remember the name. Hold on. I have to go through loads of videos here to find Cold Case Christmas. Cold Case Christmas. Yeah. Look, Rachel Runyon. Yeah, she was out playing in there was like a playground next to her house, and her mother could actually see like Rachel playing on this playground. And then she turned her back for a second. I mean, literally, like she was preparing dinner. She turned her back for a second. She turned back round. Rachel had gone. Then Rachel's older brother came running in saying that someone had stolen Rachel. And really sadly, she was murdered. And they still don't know who by. So absolutely possible. Like that, literally the blink of an eye, that little girl was snatched in front of her brother. So it does happen. It absolutely does happen. Thankfully, it doesn't happen very often, like a true stranger abduction, but it does happen. You're unfamiliar with Rachel Runyon? Go and watch this. It's only 10 minutes long. So it's from Cold Case Christmas 2022. So you have to scroll, or go to the Cold Case Christmas playlist over on Michelle Walks and find Rachel's case. But yeah, it's scary, really scary. She's only a little tiny girl as well. Little tiny girl. All right, back to this.
The red Toyota pickup. What do we know about that vehicle? Why is that something that law enforcement talked about?
Well, first of all, the red Toyota pickup was introduced by the father of the victim. It wasn't an independent witness or anything.
No, he's wrong. He's completely wrong. I'll let him carry on a bit, but he's wrong.
Like that. The dad says, you know, there could have been a vehicle down at the end of the driveway, et cetera. And so we have to take into consideration, you know, what's the geographic?
No, Chris is wrong. Don did find a red pickup truck down near the bottom, like on Ben Hill, one day. But it wasn't the day Summer disappeared. People have misunderstood. Like Don was on this YouTube channel and that YouTube channel saying that he'd seen this strange vehicle and this strange vehicle. There was also a strange blue vehicle. No. The 1998 to 2000 red or maroon Toyota Tacoma was seen by an independent witness. It was, we don't exactly know. I'll get the TBI newsroom up here, because they have a whole paragraph on it. Here we go. So, like they've done with Sebastian Rogers' case, they have a whole page for Summer. Here we go. Why did you release the information about the Toyota truck? An individual who travels through the area regularly as part of his job stated he recalls possibly seeing a 1998 2000 maroon or red Toyota Tacoma with full bed ladder rack and white buckets in the truck bed. The individual stated that the truck might have been parked in the area of Beach Creek Road and Ben Hill Road in the late afternoon to early evening on either Monday, June 14th or Tuesday, June 15th. That vehicle was not captured on surveillance cameras because there's very few surveillance cameras in the area. So, you know, I think you'd either have to go towards Rogersville in the west or Kingsport in the east to get caught on surveillance. So that truck went somewhere. That truck did go somewhere. In an effort to cover all bases and identify the driver, the TBI, in agreement with the Hawkins County Sheriff's Office and the FBI, released a vehicle description. Our hope was that the individual might have information that could help the investigation. The driver has not come forward, nor have the hundreds of vehicles reported to us matched the description panned out. So Chris McDonough is wrong. Chris McDonough has a one-track mind with Summer's case. He hates Don Wells. He believes Don Wells is guilty. And everything that he's done for this case, and he's done some really good stuff. Let me not sugarcoat this. You know, Chris's interviews with Candice were great. He was so supportive of her, so nice to her. But then once he got his teeth into Don, that was it. And he's had the blinders on ever since, which is a shame, in my opinion. But what can you do?
Region telling you as an investigator. And in this particular situation, the victim was last seen in the basement of the house. And so in order for a stranger abduction to have occurred, then that suspect had to know on that particular day, at that moment, that child would be in that basement. The victim risk continuum tells us that is a high improbability.
It is a high improbability. But Don acts like a weirdo. Don is his own worst enemy. Don didn't help himself by doing all of those panels, especially when he was drunk and when he took a poop on camera. That kind of thing does not help his case. Doesn't help his case. So I'm glad that Don is staying off YouTube. Candice does occasional live streams on her channel, if anybody's watched them. I watched one from Candice this morning, actually. It just popped up in my suggested. I don't subscribe to her channel, but her and Don were going around this, I don't know, looking at old cars. It was like some event or something. I'm not sure exactly what, but they were just walking around and Candice just had the camera on and was just like, they were just looking at cars. But he's not, he's not on, you know, night after night after night on panels. So that's good. But no, Chris always goes to the stranger abduction. Chris always says, well, there's no way that Summer could have been abducted from the basement on an afternoon when there's 2 adults and 3 other children in that immediate vicinity. There's no way that someone could have, you know, crawled up the hill, got into the basement and taken Summer without anyone seeing. Absolutely. No one did that. No one would do that. If they were going to steal a child from inside their house, then they'd scope out the joint and they'd wait until everyone was asleep. Like Elizabeth Smart. You know, Elizabeth Smart was abducted from her bed. And she absolutely was abducted from her bed. You know, she was found 9 months later, been terrorized by this weird guy and his wife. So it does happen. Thankfully, that is very, very rare. But it does happen. But Chris McDonough automatically goes to the most unlikely scenario because he then compares this most unlikely scenario with Don Wells did it. And when you compare a really unlikely scenario, like an abductor knowing that someone was in the basement at that particular time and was able to sneak up, you know, 2 adults and 3 other children, completely miss them, and about 14 dogs, or how many dogs they had, all missed them, and they were able to spirit Summer away from the basement in the middle of the day. No. Chris likes that scenario because that's less likely than a parent doing something. It's more believable that a parent may have done something, whether it's accidentally or on purpose, than an abductor in that scenario. But what Chris fails to understand, or at least chooses to just not mention, just chooses not to understand, that Summer left the basement. Summer left the basement. How do we know that Summer left the basement? Because Sheriff Ronnie Lawson told the news, WJHL, he told the news, and they publicised that news on the 16th of June, that Sheriff Lawson spoke to Summer's brothers and they last saw Summer outside. They last saw Summer outside. So, again, Chris is choosing to only talk about the scenarios that are the least likely, for his own reason, in my opinion.
And so you then go back to the situation where you go, okay, who was the last one there and what are the circumstances around that? And I think that's where the authorities have been focusing.
You know, Jason, when we cover...
I don't think it is. I think in the beginning it was, absolutely. Because, you know, they have an 11.2 acre property. They searched that entire property, including the house, grandma's camper, everything, multiple times, many times. So again, we'll go to the TBI newsroom and we'll read what the TBI actually says. Okay, so when was Summer last seen? Here we go. Have you searched the home and property around the residence? Yes, more than once, including the basement crawl space, all vehicles, outbuildings, you know, the 3 sheds, Don 3 sheds wells, barrels and other items located on the property. Additionally, K9 teams specialising in a variety of search methods have also been utilised. So phones and computers done, cell phone data done. Did you search the flower bed? Because so many people said they buried Summer in the flower bed. No, there was no flower bed. Summer's mother and grandmother stated she was planting flowers with them shortly before she was last seen. The flowers were planted in pots, and yes, the pots were examined. Okay. All right. So whether Summer went down to the basement, like the brother said, because we're assuming that this story that we've been given is truthful. But if Summer did go down to the basement, like the brother said, the brothers then saw Summer outside. That's what they told Sheriff Ronnie Lawson on the night of June 15th. And then he then gave that information to the news. The news reported that. I don't think the news would make that up.
Stories like this that happen in more populated areas, whether it's a neighborhood like Sebastian Rogers in another part of Tennessee, or in a city like Nashville, or any other city across the country. This is a very rural area. It's not like you're in a neighborhood. There's not a lot of folks nearby. If someone comes by, I think you might notice it.
Well, there's not a lot of folks nearby, but the folks that are nearby, well, let's put it this way. Many of them have issues. And it's not like 110 Ben Hill Road is literally on its own in the middle of nowhere. Like, there's properties up the top of Scotland, right, in my country. Well, Scotland's not my country, I'm in England, but the top of Scotland, right, you can buy a house with a few acres of land and you have absolutely no neighbours. No neighbours. Zero neighbours. And then you'd have to go, let's say, 3 or 4 miles to the nearest village. I'd love to live in an area like that. I really would. However, that's not 110 Ben Hill Road. Yes, it's rural. Yes, it's rugged, like up the mountains rugged. But you've got houses all along Beach Creek Road. You've got houses all up Ben Hill Road, Simpson Road, and then across the way, you've got Simpson Loop. So, yeah, the houses do have land attached to them. But it's not like 110 Ben Hill Road is in the middle of nowhere. And Beach Creek Road is the only thoroughfare, or the major thoroughfare, might not be the only thoroughfare, but the major thoroughfare that passes 110 Ben Hill Road that goes between Kingsport and Rogersville. So they do have neighbours. And we know that many of those neighbours have got problems. That's why I've ended up with nearly 600 videos on my channel about Summer Wells, because there's so many characters around there and they're all related, which is an additional issue. Your daughter used to live somewhere like that in North Yorkshire. No neighbours for miles. That would be cool. I would really like that. I'd love it. Tilly would also love it because she could bark to her heart's content and no one would shout at her. No one would tell her to be quiet. Sets all the neighbourhood dogs off. Anyway.
Reminds me a little bit of the situation with Suzanne and Barry Morphew. Suzanne Morphew went missing from her home. They were kind of isolated as well. How important is that part of the investigation, the geography and the where all this allegedly took place?
Well, yeah, terrain, especially in rural areas, plays a major part. Like basically Chris was alluding to, if it's not a high active area, high access, you're not really going to have a lot of access by strangers. So the problem that we have here is...
Well, yeah, but nobody except Chris is saying that a stranger abduction is likely. I mean, it is possible that someone passing by, let's say Summer wandered down to the road, that some random passing by picked her up. That is possible. It could well have happened because kids do get abducted. Look at Michael Vaughan. Just a month after Summer, Michael Vaughan disappeared from Fruitland, Idaho. And some lowlifes from half a mile away picked him up. And it does happen. So, yeah, it's absolutely possible that if Summer wandered down the hill onto Beach Street Road, somebody passing by could have picked her up. But not from her house. Like, the possibility of a stranger abduction increases tenfold. If you consider that Summer was 5 years old, she wasn't a baby, she could walk, and she's very active. So if she was last seen outside, she doesn't have to go very far to go down that hill and be in a position where some rando could get her. But personally, I think it's more likely, if she was abducted, that she was abducted by someone in that local area, someone that, you know, she may have known at least a little bit, or her parents knew. Yeah, Sarah Payne. That's terrifying, Sarah Payne. And Jamie Bulger, yeah. Yeah. Oh, you live in the Highlands. Can be very isolated. Oh, I don't think I'd feel isolated. No, they didn't live in a big city, no. But honestly, it's... I mean, I guess statistically, it's more likely to come to harm in a city, you know, by another's hand, than in a rural area. However, some predators do target rural areas because cities are covered with cameras. So it's probably easier to get away with abducting a child from a rural area where there's very few cameras than in a city where there's cameras on every shop, every corner. So you've got to think about the modern world. The modern world, if a predator's clever and you know, goes out targeting children, it's safer to target rural areas. I'm sorry, it just is. So there's that.
How did she get away from the house without being detected? Because in rural areas, everybody knows if there's a car nearby, you know, you're driving down the street, you see a truck pulled over to the side.
Yeah, but Summer didn't disappear in a car. Like, Summer didn't drive away. Like, Summer, a little, you know, very active little girl, she could have wandered off. Her brothers saw her outside. Then maybe her brothers were just like playing around. Maybe her brothers went back inside to play their games. And then Grandma was having a nap. And I think the thing that Candice is hiding from everybody is that she also had a nap. She had no idea where Summer was and what time Summer went missing because Candice was also napping or busy doing something. So no one had eyes on Summer. And Summer was not a little baby. You know, she could have been down that hill in seconds. So, and the dogs wouldn't have barked because they knew Summer. So it doesn't require an abductor coming up the hill and lying in wait. All it requires is Summer to have been down that hill a little bit and for it to be an opportunist. No, napping isn't a crime. No, it isn't. It isn't a crime. But I guess when your kid goes missing, you feel it is a crime. You know, you don't want to say because you know that it's your fault. It's not a criminal act, though. Look at Tyler Vaughn. Michael disappeared when Tyler was changing the baby's diaper. So, look, he was in charge of Michael at 5 years old and a baby. And babies need attention. Babies need feeding and diaper changes. And he was in one room changing the baby. And Michael, he thought, was in another room. And when he went in that room, Michael had gone. So, you know, you can't account for, you know, things like that. It's just so sad that unfortunately Michael Vaughn was abducted. the only fault attributed to anybody is the abductors. But Candice might have been, I don't know, inside doing something. She didn't realise Summer had gone out. There's all sorts of things that could happen. Lioness. We don't know what Candice has told law enforcement. Candice might have been very upfront and honest with law enforcement. She might have said, look, I had a nap. You know, my mother went in her camper. We planted the flowers. My mother went and had a nap. I dozed off. And she doesn't have to tell the public that. In fact, I would imagine law enforcement would advise her not to say anything. So, I don't know.
In those kind of communities, they want to pull over and offer assistance. So access to the home, access to the child is really going to play a big part here. And that's why early on there was a lot of threats and harassment received by the Wells, because everybody thought it was a low probability that, you know, it was an abduction.
Okay, guests are staying with us. Coming up next, what does the family property actually look like?
I'm looking at this terrain and I'm going, holy cow, she could have even, there's a million possibilities here. Yeah, there's down there, and there's the road down there.
Did you know that in middle-income communities, there are about 13 books for every child? But in some underserved...
I have no idea why they had this advert in the middle here. All right, so we're now, they're now doing Chris McDonough's footage of the property. We've all seen it. You know, we've all seen this. But Vinnie plays it. Did she go to sleep during her polygraph? The first polygraph she took, they couldn't go through with it because wasn't she too upset, distraught? I think that's what she said. I'm not sure that she fell asleep. It was Seth Rogers that fell asleep during his polygraph. Allegedly. That might be what you're thinking of, Charlie. That's exactly it. Chris acted like he was going to help, but he stabbed them in the back. He did. Once he got on the phone with Don, that was it. And look, I'll tell you that I thought Chris was right. The first few months of this case, after Chris did these videos, and you know, I'd seen the property and listened to this narrative that Chris put out about Dawn and the stepsisters. Go back and watch my videos. I was all in favour of what Chris was saying. Up until I did the Truth in the Hills series. So what I did in, I think it was October, November of 2021. So we were 6 months into the case. And I went right back to the beginning and I covered everything again. And I did this mini series called Truth in the Hills. And it was after that, after I'd reviewed all the evidence again, I thought, you know what? I don't think the parents did anything. Look, I still can't say that they didn't, but there's more likely scenarios. And since then, I've been covering as wide a range of different theories and different ideas and different people as I can to cover everything and not stick with just this one trick pony that Chris McDonough has. And looking back on these videos now of Chris's, and I feel very different towards these videos now. Not that, I mean, this was very useful. It was a really good video. And his interview with Candice at the swimming hole, I really liked that interview. He was so kind to her. And then he spoke to Dawn, and that was it. And Candice absolutely felt stabbed in the back, and quite rightly so. But yet, he absolutely can behave like a professional. He doesn't do this to every family. He doesn't do what he did in Summer's case to every family. Look how supportive he's been in the Michael Vaughan case. You know, via the Cold Case Foundation, he's worked with the Vaughan family and with Fruitland Police. He was actually there. You see him at the press conference in December of 2022 when Chief Huff from Fruitland PD announced the suspects, the 4 suspects. You know, when they had those boards, do you remember that? When they had those boards, he turned those boards round and we saw Stacey, Sarah Wanderer and Brandon Shirtliff and Adrian Lucien. Chris was right there, like representing the Cold Case Foundation. So Chris doesn't do this to every case. Chris really helps in some cases and law enforcement trust him. But in this case, I don't know why he's still banging the same drum after all this time. Didn't they say that the dad was smoking weed? In Michael's case or Summer's case? I'm assuming, Charlie, you mean Michael's case. I think he was a weed smoker, but I don't think he was smoking weed at the time Michael disappeared. I think he obviously we've only got what he reports, but he was changing the baby's diaper and then he ordered pizza on the phone or on the computer. I can't remember which, but he ordered pizza for dinner. And it was after he'd done his order that he went to find Michael and Michael had gone. So it was literally changing the baby's diaper and ordering dinner. And we know that order went in at 6:40. So it was straight after that he went into the living room where Michael had been playing on his games console and Michael had gone. So he'd snuck out probably whilst Tyler was changing the diaper. So it's about 15 minutes, I think, where Tyler was distracted. And then he searched the house and the workshop and Michael was not on the property at all. So he went to the splash pad. But unfortunately, by that time, Michael had been abducted. So while Tyler was looking round the house, Michael was abducted. If Tyler had gone out, like, of course you wouldn't. You'd search your house first, wouldn't you? You know, you'd just think they were in another room or they were playing hide and seek, or you'd think you would search your house first before you go out to search for your kid on the street. So Tyler didn't do anything wrong. He did all the right things, but it's just unfortunate. It was just that split-second timing that was off. So sad. Tyler's got to live with that. So it's no surprise that he failed polygraphs because he must feel so guilty inside. And he shouldn't, but he must do. He really must do. Anyway.
Or where the bus is, that little bushy area right there, they could have been sitting
Right out here?
Yeah.
Okay, come show me. That's right.
And I just recently found out that there was I guess he's a child molester.
Okay.
That lives like literally 8 minutes from my house. And he can literally walk from his house into my house within 8 minutes.
Okay.
And like that bushy area right there, you can't really tell.
So I think she's talking about Frank Light there. I think it is about 8 minutes. I think she must be talking about Frank Light there.
Anybody's crouched down there or anything.
That's Chris McDonough at the home with Summerwell's mother, walking the property, trying to figure out what's going on there, because this is a case where a child is alleged to have disappeared in the middle of the day from that property, which brings me to my next question, another important one in this investigation, which is, what does the family property look like? Still with me, Chris McDonough, who was touring the property along with Jason Jensen. So guys, what I want to do, Chris, I want to show everyone the tour that you did. I think it gives us incredible insight here. Let's take a look.
It is odd how he treats the families, yeah. He couldn't have treated them more different. I don't understand. I don't understand. why he did this to the Wells. I think they were way past weed, more into meth. Who are we talking about, Vicky? The Wells or the Vaughans? Don's drug of choice is coke. And Candice, it was alcohol and weed. But Don, yeah, he drinks, but he's a coke addict, Don. Hopefully, they've maybe dealt with some of their issues now. I don't know. Do you want to go out? Hold on. Just open the door for Cassie. I'm not coming with you. You go and do what you're doing. Oh, no. She wants me to go. No, I'm busy. I'm busy, sorry. See, look, they're doing all that barking, those dogs. Now, look, both Don and Jodie Sue, the neighbour, said that the Wells dogs weren't there that day. Now, look, these are dogs that, you know, come and go as they please. They're not penned in. There's no fence around the hill. So those dogs are just, you know, it's not that the Wells bought them. They just like turned up there. And then had puppies and then had more puppies. And they ended up with about 13 or 14 different dogs. And at the time Summer disappeared, one of the dogs had puppies. Like at this time, this was July, so Summer had been missing a month. The dog was under the crawl space with her puppies. So she would either have been heavily pregnant or just had the puppies when Summer disappeared. So that dog would have been on the property. A heavily pregnant dog is not going to leave with a whole pack of dogs. They're not going to go on a walkabout. It's usually the male dogs that go on the walkabout. If they can sniff a girl in season, a bitch in season, you know, somewhere, the male dogs will go on a walkabout, right? But according to Don and Jodie Sue, neither of whom were on the hill at the time Summer disappeared, the dogs weren't there that day. All right then, okay, whatever. But even if some of the dogs weren't there that day, there was at least one dog, like the mama dog, would have been there that day. And I don't think every single dog would have gone. Like, what do they do? Just like go for a day out somewhere. Right? Okay, whatever. But listen to them barking. But then again, if you have dogs that always bark, like they bark at everything, you tune them out. You tune them out. Like, you know, there's dogs around here that bark a lot. And I don't pay attention to them anymore because they're always there. So you just tune it out. Like, I live near a train line and the trains don't bother me because it doesn't even register with me when the trains go by. But it's not like these are attack dogs. But I don't believe that someone crawled up on that hill to get Summer. I think Summer went down, if indeed she was abducted. Cassie hears the dogs barking. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, the neighbours. Yeah, the neighbours are into meth. Yeah. Definitely. They are. Like, I live near the train line. I used to live nearer. I used to literally live right across the road. So when the big freight trains went through at night, like literally the house would shake because I had an attic room. And sometimes I used to sleep in the attic room. You could feel the house like shaking when the big freight trains went by. But even that, I just got used to it. Now I live a little bit further away, but they're still quite loud. Like I've got the window open now, and if I really, really attended to it, I'd hear them. But it's like living near a busy road. You just tune it out eventually. Anyhow.
Hey.
I mean, look, somebody could have got up there and stolen a child. Those dogs are not attack dogs, are they? They're not very protective. That's just that one that did the little woo. That's just a little, I'm a bit scared, but I'm going to alert my friends, that kind of bark. None of that is aggressive barking. But if you're not used to hearing those dogs barking, then you're obviously going to go and have a look at what they're barking at. But I think it's a moot point, honestly. Don also said they will never find her. Did he actually say that, or did he actually say that, or was he misquoted? That was a hound bark, yeah. I mean, they're like mixes, aren't they, these? Like, there's a bit of terrier in them, there's a bit of hound in them. But, yeah, oh. Like huskies do that, don't they? They bark like that.
You know, I have much more respect for what you're telling me by standing here, and I got my little camera here. So, when I'm looking at this terrain, and I'm going, holy cow! She could have even. There's a million possibilities here.
Yeah, there's
down there, and there's the road down there.
Yeah, that's the road. That's my mom's house.
Okay.
Like literally, it's.
And this right here.
Usually you can see the road because they have went through here and mowed and took down a bunch of stuff away from the power lines. Okay. But usually it's full up. You can't even see the road.
That day, though, how was it? Was it full up?
They
or was
actually,
it like
that day and a few days prior to that, they were working on this.
Okay.
So I've even come to a conclusion maybe one of them people have snatched it.
Oh, interesting.
Because they were all the way up here.
Yeah, I see those, the path down there. I see the tracks down there.
Yep.
You're over there.
And they were all the way up here to my light pole.
Okay. And you told TBI all this, right?
I told TBI this, yes.
Okay.
And the TBI did say that all the people working in the area were checked. So let's just see if we can find that. I know it was said. So surveillance video, entire area was canvassed. This you remind the Reach Creek area is very rural. Question the parents, yes, more than once. Others in the home, yes, some of his brothers have been interviewed along with others who stayed in the home in the months before her disappearance. So that would have been like Jose. You question the neighbours and search their properties, yes. Registered SOs, yes. Evidence some are abducted, not that we've developed at this stage, however, we continue to investigate all possibilities. Is the FBI involved? Yes. I'm sure it says. It says that people working in the area have been checked. Sure it does. Motorways, aerial searches. I'm sure I read it. Maybe I'm just missing it. Well, I'm sure I read it. But yeah, the tree cutters. The tree cutters were there. Did they find every tree cutter? Were they checked enough though? Hopefully. But How can we prove it conclusively? We can't. We can't. We can't. Could she have been got by a critter? I guess. However, unless Summer had wandered like off a track or, you know, into the undergrowth and then got by a critter, I guess so. However, you know, critters are not clean, are they? So they leave clothing behind. There would be blood. There would be evidence. There would be evidence of that. However, if Summer had wandered into an area that was dense foliage, and, you know, she got lost and she was just like wandering about, could a critter have got her then? Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Oh, yeah, Don said some horrible things. Yeah, Don, yeah, beaten, locked in a dungeon. Yeah, Don has no filter. He has zero filter, and it makes him sound guilty, or it makes him sound like he knows more, because he just says what's on his mind. You know, those dark thoughts, he just voices it all. They should be arrested for neglect. I mean, look, there was potentially a case for it with the boys, but they haven't been, have they? So presumably, I don't know how to answer that in relation to the boys. I don't know how to answer that, because we don't know anything about the boys. We don't know what they've told law enforcement or the forensic psychologists that would have interviewed them. We don't know what they've told their foster parents. All we know is that the boys weren't returned, but they gave the Wells chance after chance after chance to, you know, do certain programs. Like they had to do an addiction program and a parenting program, and they didn't finish it. They didn't finish it, which I believe is why they've finally lost custody of those boys. So, you know, the cops have and DCS have looked at those cases, those 3 cases of those boys, very, very closely. So whatever conclusion they came to, yes, there was some neglect there, but did it tantamount to criminal neglect is the issue, or was it redeemable? Was there, you know, the neglect and the property being in a bit of a shambles, was that all due to addiction? And yeah, it was. And so I'm guessing DCS thought, well, rather than, you know, appealing for criminal charges, let's give the parents a chance to redeem themselves and to beat their addiction. And unfortunately, that didn't pan out. But yeah, I do believe there was some neglect. I do believe there was. But you've got to think at where is that line drawn to bring criminal charges? It has to be a solid case. It has to be a solid case. Hope the boys taught their truth someday. They probably have. They probably have to law enforcement, and they've been interviewed by, you know, specialist forensic psychologists and stuff. So we have to hope that the boys have said everything they know, and it coincides with what the parents have said. And I think after 3 years, if the boys were holding back for the sake of Don and Candice, I don't think they would be anymore, because they know that they're not going back to Don and Candice now. So if there were, you know, that were things that they were holding back in fear, they don't need to be in fear anymore. So I think the boys will have told everything they know by now. The forensic examination of traffic data gave them who was in the area. Yeah, that was April, I think, 2022. And it was the lead detective from Hawkins County who said it was the yeah, the traffic and the cell towers have all been checked. So yeah. Could it have been an accident? Look, I've never favoured the accident scenario, because if a kid has an accident, wouldn't you just call 911? I did contemplate, however, when Don, and this was quite recent, Don did an interview and said that on the 14th, the boys went up on the roof of the house and Summer wanted to go up on the roof. So Don let her go up on the roof. And I thought, well, what if on the 15th, when she was bored, like, you know, let's say Candice had gone for a nap, Grandma had gone for a nap, and the boys were playing on their games, and Summer went outside and she was bored. What if she climbed a ladder? Let's say they left a ladder there. What if she climbed the ladder and got up on the roof and then fell off? Would that be something that they covered up? Potentially. It'd have to be that serious, you know, that obviously neglectful for them to cover up an accident. But they've been very good at doing it. For them not to find a body, to not find any evidence at all in 3 years, they have to be pretty good at that. They have to be pretty good at that. But I can't discount it, but it's just not my number one theory, if you will.
Okay. And yeah, I can see the cars going by. That is not far from your property.
Mm-mm.
Is there a holler down there? I mean, is there a river of some sort?
The creek runs all the way around the property.
And how deep is the creek? Okay, just so it's like an inch or two.
That's the steep side of the hill. So the driveway's on this side, like over here. Beach Street Road runs along there, and then the shallow side of the hill is there. So I don't think Summer will go down that steep side. She'd either go down the driveway or the dog trail, which isn't quite so steep, or she'd go down the other side to the creek, that side, this side. But that's an easy walk. It's very, very, you know, it's not a steep hill at all. It's more grassy rather than rocky. But the dogs, like the sheriff has told us, the dogs, the search dogs, got a track off the hill. They got Summer's track off the hill. Now, Don says it was down the dog trail, which is just one of the trails that lead you down to Ben Hill Road. The sheriff made it sound like it was the driveway, but it doesn't matter whether it was the dog trail or the driveway. The dogs did follow Summer's scent down the hill. So make of that what you will. Bye, Mike.
Okay.
You'd be lucky to get wet enough to do anything.
Okay. So walk me through. You get home. You take the groceries inside. Is Don home, by the way?
No, he's
okay.
not.
Okay.
Actually, I parked the truck and I opened both doors. It's really hard because this lawnmower is. But I opened the doors up and I shook her. I said, "Wake up, we're at home." She jumped right up.
Okay.
Like nothing. I unbuckled her and I said, "Come on." I said, "Mom, I'll be right back." Went in there and got the boys and they were sitting at the table. And I said, "Come on, let's get the groceries out." And we brought them all in the house, went through them all. And all that.
And this is her. That's her swing.
That's her swing right there.
Come show me her swing. Why is this? And who's this?
That is Smoking Boots. That's my boy's cat.
And how many dogs do you have here on the property? About.
Honestly, I don't know because people just keep dropping them off.
Hi. I know. Okay. Sorry. So this is her swing.
That's her swing.
This is her playground.
Yep.
And she loved this area. Boy, you know, I'm looking at this, and this terrain, Candace, just strikes me as being so dense and just. Is that what they say, the dog trail? Where's this dog trail thing? That
I'm not sure, honestly.
There's so many of them.
The dogs go in every different.
Yeah,
way.
I saw the dogs came out of the woods as we were pulling up.
Yeah.
Okay.
They do that all the time.
Okay.
That trail right there, my boys, they ride those dirt bikes that are leaning against the truck over there.
Okay.
You can see there's one of them.
Okay.
And
those are like 50 cc's, aren't they?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That one ain't. I think it's only like 25, I think.
Okay.
But yeah, they go down that trail with their dirt bikes and then come back up on the road, up on the driveway and go around and stuff.
So the boys are allowed to go down to the road, ride the trail bikes down the hill, go around, and then come back up the driveway. They're allowed to do that. Now, what if Summer just followed them? So what if the boys were playing on the games, as Candice said? Candice went to sleep. The boys went outside, saw Summer outside, and then the boys decided to go back inside. You know, maybe the boys wanted to go back to their games or whatever, and Summer stayed outside. How long after someone dies can a dog detect it? Well, that depends on a whole bunch of conditions. So under normal conditions, so not like excessively hot or excessively enclosed or excessively cold, studies have shown, and this was studied, that someone who's been dead for an hour and a half can be detected by a dog. So in one experiment, what they did was they placed cloth onto a dead body and left it there for like 20 minutes or something. And then in an experiment, the dog had to pick the cloth that had been on the dead body amongst a whole bunch of other cloths that didn't have cadaver scent on it. So it's experimental conditions, and dogs are reasonably accurate when the body has been dead for about an hour and a half. Now, that's an experiment. So a dead body lying on the ground for an hour and a half, a dog's probably going to be able to detect that under normal conditions. I'd say even less time if it's a hot enclosed space. But it's not like some people say that the instant that somebody dies, a dog can detect it. That's not true.
A lot of that video, extremely interesting. So, Chris, what did you take away from touring that property where Summer Wells allegedly disappeared from?
Yep. So,
dogs absolutely do miss deceased bodies. They do. You have to be in close proximity for a cadaver dog to alert. So you have to know the area where you want to find the dead body. One way that dogs are good, however, is let's say somebody died in your property and then you took the body away and concealed the body. Dogs are good at detecting that a dead body has been there. So let's say Summer had an accident and died in the house, let's say, or fell off the roof and died, and then an hour and a half later, Candice found her dead body and chose to take it off the property and hide it somewhere. There's a very, very good chance that a cadaver dog would be able to detect the scent of death, even if that body was removed. And that body could have been removed ages before. So, you know, the scent of death soaks into the ground. So you'd have to do a really, really good job of scrubbing that area. Like, really good job of scrubbing that area for a dog to be fooled. And if the body was outside, there's no way in the world you'd be able to scrub an area to remove the scent. No way. But if a body is lying in a field, let's say, and you just let a cadaver dog run around, yes, they could come upon that dead body by accident, just by, you know, running around. But that's not really what they're trained for. The cadaver dogs are really trained for close proximity work. So you like send them into a very specific area. So it depends what circumstance you're talking about. But I do think that if Summer had died in the house and she was then hidden, assuming that her body was there for an hour and a half before it was before Candice detected it, then I think a cadaver dog would have alerted. But if you've literally just died and then your body's removed, then no, a cadaver dog wouldn't detect that.
Wanting to keep an open mind, right, Vinnie, when I'm talking to Mom, about trying to understand what the suspect may have seen if this was, you know, let's stay with the lane of an abduction of some sort. And the terrain is so thick and dense. And by the way, this is only about 3 weeks after the initial report of her disappearance. So this is pretty much what it looked like the day she would have disappeared. And so I thought to myself, okay, is it possible that somebody could have hid in those woods, could have come up behind, you know, the back area there behind the camper, because you can see the road from the top of the property. But then again, you've got to think, okay, does the suspect expose themselves down on that road? Because you could even hear cars going by while I was there. And so Mom then explains that the only way she thought her daughter may have gone out of that house was through a basement door, which was on the left side of that house, looking at it in this shot. It would have been to the left of that. And that was down by the bus and right in that area, right there in that shot. That would have been what they call the dog trail. And so, you know, the fact that somebody would have had to navigate all of these obstacles, et cetera, and that's the door, and get into that door to where Summer was, it really does raise a lot of questions about the abduction theory.
All right, Jason Jensen, the one thing.
It does if you're saying that an abductor is going to come up the hill brazenly and abduct a child from the house in the middle of the day. But if Summer wandered away a small way, then the chances of abduction increase tenfold, in my opinion. So there's that.
Thing that struck me as Chris is walking around the neighborhood, and Chris is a nice guy, he's not going to harm anyone. The dogs, they don't even know how many dogs. The dogs are alerting to Chris, who is obviously in a friendly mode there. What are your thoughts about the dogs on that property and the prospects of a little girl wandering away without the dogs alerting, or someone taking her without the dogs alerting?
You know, Vinnie, we were on the same mindset when I was watching the video, you know, from Chris. The thing that struck me the most was how many dogs were there. So obviously anytime a stranger would
That's true. Dogs are only as good as their handlers. Absolutely.
approach the home, I'm sure the dogs would bark at him. Or at
right. So I think we can ascertain that it's very, very, very unlikely that a stranger would have gone up into the yard and abducted Summer from the house. I think we can ascertain this. And how long have they been talking about this one theory? This one theory. It's either stranger abduction or what? Because all they've talked about is stranger abduction. It's like a one-trick pony with these people. And this is what I don't like about this interview. I don't like this one theory fits all, and let's find all the reasons why Summer couldn't have been abducted from her house. We know how incredibly unlikely it will be, given it's the middle of the day, given that you're going to get detected coming up into the yard. You'd have to be absolutely brazen or off your face on something, and for no one to see you and no one to notice. And you've got the dogs, the boys, the adults. And how would an abductor know that, Don might be there? Don might be there with a gun. How would they know? So, look, no. But they've spent all this time, negating the stranger abduction theory. But yet we've not talked about anything else yet. It's it struck me. I was so annoyed at this. I was so annoyed at this for spending so much time on this one very, very unlikely scenario.
Police gather down, down. Even friendly dogs will go down and greet somebody with tails wagging and everything. But certainly, the first moment they're shocked by a stranger coming through the woods, they'd be barking and alerting the owners. I'm sure is what the typical patterns are. I own dogs, and that's what my dogs do anytime someone approaches the front of the house. So I would think that.
Yeah, I mean, my dogs do. Like, someone walks by, like I live down like you've got a bunch of like houses, but we're down a cul-de-sac, so you can't get a car down the track on either the front or the back. So you can't surveil me in your car. You can't, because I don't live on a road. It's just a little track. Like you could get a bike down, but you can't get a car down. No way. Just wouldn't fit. So my dogs don't see a lot of traffic. They don't see any traffic from the road, and very few people walk by, because also I'm at the end of the track. So it's only really the people directly across that get visitors, or my next door neighbour that gets visitors. So the dogs don't see very many people. So when they see somebody, they're automatically on alert because they're not attuned to it. So Tilly, like, spends her days, after she's had her work, she spends her days looking out the window, waiting for someone to come by. And Noodle sits in the windowsill. So those are the two alert dogs. Cassie completely ignores them. Cassie doesn't get involved. But if someone comes through the door, someone actually comes through the door, then Tilly and Noodle become like big friends. Like if someone burgled me, like as long as they were prepared to, take the chance and come through the door, because Tilly's big. So Tilly barks, the likelihood is that no one is going to come through because they see the size of her. But once they do come through the door, Tilly turns into this big teddy bear. Whereas Cassie then turns on. So she doesn't stand in the window barking. She doesn't see the point of it. But if someone comes through the door who she doesn't know, then she barks. So Cassie bides her time. But in the Wells case, those dogs might be barking all the time at different things. How do we know? We don't know, do we?
In order for there to be any kind of viable abduction scenario, she'd have to wander off, like little girls do, chasing a butterfly or something, find herself far enough away from the home that she encounters somebody that shouldn't be there. That's about the only.
All right, so let's talk about that. So Jensen is talking now about a much most likely scenario that Summer has wandered off. So let's start with that. That's the place to start. But yet we are 19 and a half minutes into the show when Jensen says, yeah, well, she could have wandered off. And then how do we know what happened? How do we know Summer could have got lost? She could have fallen down a ravine and died and no one's found her. A critter could have got her and no one's found the evidence. Or somebody could have picked her up. Let's start there. Let's start with the much more likely scenario that Summer walked away. Let's start there. Let's not start with someone came up in the basement and how unlikely that will be, and then talk about that for 19 minutes. Let's start at the most likely point and work from there. Surely we start from the most likely scenario. And then when you've crossed off the most likely scenario, that the likely scenario is impossible, like Occam's razor is impossible, then we go down to, well, these are less likely scenarios, but we've out theoried the most likely scenario. So what's left? You know, however improbable, what is left must be the truth. But you start with the stuff that's most likely. And if you can't find enough evidence to dispute or refute the most likely scenario, then you stay with that. You don't go into the really unlikely scenarios unless you've completely cleared the likely ones. It's obvious to me. It's obvious to me.
Only thing I can think of.
And Chris, with that scenario, going back to the property here, like I can see that happening in a much more densely populated place. You're at a park, you're at a mall, a child wanders off and can get scooped up, right? But here, it seems like there's a little more isolation. So someone would have to be lying in wait and just hoping that the child wanders away.
Yeah.
And Vinnie goes immediately back to the stranger scenario. Immediately back. Vinnie, come on. Vinnie, so annoying.
Absolutely, Vinnie.
Oh, thank you, Purple AJ, for gifting 5 memberships. You are so kind once again. We've got Wanderlusting, Arctic Fox True Crime, It's Just Me, Mekiteki, I think, and G Wiz. Thank you so much, Purple AJ. You are so kind. And welcome, you 5. You get a month's free membership. Thank you so much. Yeah, sensationalism. Yeah, sensationalism.
And what you and Jason were talking about, you know, just going back to the dogs for a second, when I pulled up, there were, I counted them, there were about 16 dogs that came out of the woods.
16 when you pulled up?
When I pulled up, there were 16, and I asked her, where are all these dogs coming from? And you know, Mom said that folks in the area just drop the dogs off in the neighborhood, and they all come up to that property.
Okay, to me that speaks volumes. That is incredibly insightful in all of this. All right, Jason. So as you look at the property, there are other possibilities here. You know, without pointing a finger at anyone, but if something happened to her,
oh, Vinnie, there's other things. There's other possibilities. All right, other possibilities. Good stuff. 20.5 minutes in, we've got other possibilities.
and someone wanted to dispose of those remains in that terrain, do you think it would survive the level of searching that was done?
I would think initially, yeah, because the scent of cadaver isn't so strong with a fresh death. But as time goes on, certainly cadaver dogs could pick up the scent. So, but initially you're looking for displaced soil where you could see that there was, some shoveling or something and replacement of soil or disturbance of vegetation if there was some kind of clandestine burial. Other than that,
yeah, you would see disturbed soil and disturbed grass and stuff if you disposed of the body in that kind of terrain. But that area is so dense, the foliage is so dense that there would be huge amounts of just acreage that the dogs wouldn't have been able to search, because they can't send a search dog into an unsafe area. They can't. Now, there are some dogs that specialize in searching really, really dangerous terrain. So you get dogs that, like Belgian Malinois, right? Perfect for this. They're so agile, they're so athletic that they're trained to go into disaster zones looking for survivors, right? So, the dogs who search through rubble after an earthquake or, 9/11, we've just had the anniversary of 9/11. And, you've got to remember the searchers, those men and women and many, many dogs who went there, searching through all of that rubble, looking for survivors. And we see this in many disaster zones where the dogs there, they are trained to deal with that kind of really harsh, dangerous terrain. But most search dogs are not trained in that kind of terrain, not trained in that kind of disaster zone. You have to be very specialist to do that kind of work. But in mountainous terrain, like in summers, you would assume that the searchers would at least have some experience, and the dogs would have some experience in searching mountainous terrain. But even so, you can't send a dog into really dense foliage and follow them. You know, the dog can only go where the handler can go. So I think that there are many places where a dead body would not have been detected. But that would have been, I think, off the property, and maybe not in the immediate vicinity of the property. Now, remember, the property is 11.5 acres. But the thing I keep going back to, is it true there are lots of caves? There will be, yeah. There are caves. And we've talked about caves just a couple of days ago in relation to Sebastian Rogers. Now, where Sebastian lives in Middle Tennessee, Summer's in Northeast Tennessee, Sebastian's in Middle Tennessee. The terrain around Sebastian's home is, yes, there's a lot of woodland, but it's not as mountainous. Like there's some hills, but it's not mountainous like in Summer's area. Like Summer lived on a hill that was on the base of a mountain. But the thing that I always go back to is those footprints. I can't get over the fact that law enforcement found some footprints and a dog alerted, a dog who was specifically, like a live scent tracker, specifically searching for Summer's scent. I can't get over the fact that a dog alerted on 2 sets of footprints. I can't get over that. I have to have that explained before I can move on from that.
And, you know, I would feel that TBI did a sufficient job with their search, as they've certainly moved on to other areas, including doing polygraphs. So it really kind of narrows it down. If it's not the parents doing some kind of concealment or some other hostile force, it's somebody from outside the home. And then the question really gets vague, who could that be?
Absolutely. Thanks so much for your help. Wow.
So Jason Jensen, honestly, I wish Jason Jensen was on his own and could have had just, you know, the chance to expand on his thinking, because he was the much more sensible guest, in my opinion. So who do we get next? Because he moves on. Who do we have next? Oh, we've Chris still on. Can't remember who she is. And then there's a woman at the end. I'm just going to play a little bit of this. I'm not going to play it all the way to the end because we will have been here hours. I'm going to play a little bit more of this. Can't remember who she is. Does anybody know who she is? He'll have announced who she is, won't he? We'll start there. Where was she last seen? All right, let's play a little bit of this.
Where was she last seen? Absolutely significant in all of this. Let me bring in my guests who are going to help us. Former homicide detective and host of The Interview Room, Chris McDonell, has done a lot of investigating of this case, and forensic psychiatrist, trial expert, witness, author, and columnist, Dr. Carol Lieberman.
All right, so she's on quite a lot. She's on Court TV quite a lot.
What I want to do, Chris and Dr. Carol, is take a look at what Chris did going inside the home and showing us the last place where Summer Wells allegedly was. Let's take a look at that.
Them three were sitting right here in front with their eyes glued to the TV, like always. And I said, boys, where's your sister at? Well, she just went downstairs and on the plane. So I went over here like this. So this is where the stairs are.
Okay.
It's actually down under there.
Oh, down into her bedroom.
Our bedroom, and then hers is on the other side.
Oh, okay, in the basement.
Yeah, in the basement.
Well, this makes sense now.
All right, so I'm going to skip this bit because Chris does his usual thing of, you know, how terrible it was. Can't remember exactly what Carol Lieberman said. Hold on, let's have a listen. Let's have a listen in here.
I think people seem to be looking everywhere, but, you know, not wanting to confront, you know, on a deeper level, the parents.
Right. I just clicked on that. I don't have timestamps for this. That was just a chance click. And it's very clear she does not know very much about the case, because the parents have been turned upside down, back to front by social media. They've also been interrogated by law enforcement. Don Wells spent nearly a year in jail on probation violation. So they basically were able to separate out the two parents for months. We've got the boys in protective custody who will have been forensically interviewed numerous times. And yet we've got, oh, well, did they look at the parents?
First of all, like letting the dogs, you were saying that says a lot, you know, the fact that they have all these dogs roaming around and that they let people drop them off. You know, people just come and they drop their dogs off. There is a carelessness. There's alcohol abuse, there's drug abuse, there's a carelessness of taking care of the kids. I mean, the kids, her brothers are now taken by Child Protective Services. So what does that tell you? And there was supposed to have been abuse. They took them because of being abused, and so many other things.
All right, okay. We've done this to death. We've even talked about this in this live stream. So I'm going to cut her off there. Look. There was some neglect. Yes, there was addiction issues. There was. But as I said before, after all this time, you know, the boys now have been, you know, they've lost their parental rights to those three boys. And presumably that would extend to Summer. If Summer was found and she came home alive, she wouldn't be going back to Don and Candice. Presumably, the loss of parental rights would also extend to Summer as well. That's just an assumption. That's not something I've heard. That's just an assumption. But after all this time, and the boys are now in an environment where they know that they're not going back to Ben Hill Road, if criminal charges were possible, if the abuse that the boys detailed was sufficient, then criminal charges would have been brought against Don and Candice. But I'm not saying there wasn't neglect. I think that the addiction to alcohol and drugs has marred this family, has created a lot of problems for this family, like it does in many, many, many families. But I don't think there was enough evidence of criminal neglect or abuse that was enough to charge them. So then we have to say, well, Summer disappeared. We're not looking at the result of criminal abuse. That's what I would conclude from that. There was another guest on at the end. So she, like, literally the whole program is Chris McDonough. I would really like a major channel like Court TV to do the Summer Wells case, but using different guests than the usual. So look at the most likely scenarios. Have the guests on who are going to be the most open-minded. Not just going through Chris McDonough. And I'm not saying that I hate Chris McDonough by any stretch of the imagination. I think he's done some really good work. I think when he came into the Summer Wells case, he did good work. He was great at the beginning. Like I said, the interview with Candice at the swimming hole was very, very nicely done. And when he went to the home, he was very kind to Candice. I think it was all on the same day, wasn't it? But he turned the tables on them. And I think that was horrible. Looking back now, I didn't think that immediately, but looking back now, I think that was really bad. But to other cases, he's been great. He just needs to curb it. He needs to take the blinkers off on some of the cases where he's already made up his mind and nothing will shake him. All right, so this is someone called Janine Driver. Now, I don't know who she is, this person. So I'm just going to end with a little bit of her.
Janine Driver is with us. Janine, great to see you.
Nice to see you.
she's very open. I mean, Chris is not the only person she spoke to, but she gave an in-depth walking around, telling exactly what her story is. What did you see? What did you hear from her?
Listen, it's not a slam dunk that, you know, sometimes I watch someone and I immediately say, oh, this person's lying. That's not happening here. And with that being said, there are some hot spots.
He doesn't have the best reputation. No, he doesn't. And that's a shame, because potentially he could do really, really good work. And he has done really good work on some cases. And it's a shame that his reputation gets tarnished when he gets really headstrong and when he gets the blinkers on. It's a shame.
That if I had an opportunity to ask her, I would ask some additional questions. And what are some of the hot spots? She says, actually, I opened the truck when talking about coming home. The word actually, and we've weighed in on this before, Vinnie, and you at home, actually is comparing two things. You know, did you buy the blue truck or the red car? Actually, I bought the blue truck. We know what you're comparing. When someone says, actually, I opened the truck, as opposed...
Actually, I don't agree with that. Actually, I don't think necessarily actually is a comparison, like a word that you use when you're comparing stuff. Some people use actually for emphasis. And look, Candice is not the most eloquent speaker in the world. So analysing her language, analysing her, like, you know, for saying actually, what this woman, whoever she is, I've no idea what her reputation's like or anything. Actually, I'd rather her just shut her mouth, because she doesn't have Candice's baseline. So how do we know that Candice doesn't use the word actually all the time? Like some people use, you know, words that you wouldn't normally put in a sentence. Some people use them for emphasis, or it's a habit or something. So you've no idea how Candice talks, so you can't accuse her of using actually in a sentence, and that means something.
Opposed to what? So this, to me, would be the question, as opposed to what? Anytime you see that or hear that word in a text or email or in a conversation, ask as opposed to what. She says it again. I was actually watching TV. She says the boys were in the other room and I was actually here watching TV with her daughter. Then she does go outside and she scratches her head, which is a pacifier. The higher the hold, the more anxiety is told.
Or it's hot and she might just have had an itch. She scratched her head because she had an itch. That could be possible as well. I hate this kind of thing. I hate this kind of guest. I really do.
The closer we get to the brain, the more stress and anxiety. It makes sense. Her daughter's missing. So she scratches her head. Then she does an elbows out like this. We saw Chris Watts do this, Vinnie. You may remember when the police officer went into the knee.
Oh, come on. Oh, no. Yes, Chris Watts standing there with like this really worried look on his face. Some people put their hands behind the head and stretch out just because they're stretching. Come on now. Can't compare Candice holding her arms up to Chris Watts. Chris Watts had a whole massive bag of red flags. She had a massive bag of red flags. Chris Watts did. It wasn't just him standing there with his hands behind his head. It was that he was like waving side to side. He was shifty. His face looked completely shocked when Nate, the neighbour, was playing the surveillance footage. You've got to look at the totality of everything. If you're analysing body language, look at the totality of it. God.
Neighbor's house. He had a camera on his uniform, and Chris Watts is watching footage of the neighbor watching him load something into the truck, which we later find out is Shanann and his two young daughters, Celeste and Bella, were supposedly still alive at that point. When we see Chris Watts see that footage, he goes like this: elbows out, shock is about. So we see this in law enforcement all the time, or if you are a first responder, you'll often see this. The World Trade Center crumbled down. You see people do these elbows out.
Yeah, all right, but you might also do that when you're stretching. Like Candice had done a lot of driving that day. Maybe she was just stretching out. Right, she'd been to swimming hole. She'd had that interview with Chris. She'd gone back home. You know, maybe she's stretching out.
Basketball players, Caitlin Clark, love her. Caitlin Clark, right? If she misses a ball, doesn't happen often, but you might see elbows out right here when a play doesn't go the way we want it to go. So this is shock is about, there's a problem here. She does use past tense. Past tense is indicative of someone telling the truth. She jumped up. I'm not hearing tense changes, which would be indicative of.
Well, of course she's going to use past tense because it happened in the past. It was an event that had happened 3 weeks previous. So of course she's going to use past tense.
Someone creating a story. We went and we got candy and stuff. I'd want to know what's and stuff. And we literally walked. Now, this word literally walked is confusing to me because why literally? We just walked here. Isn't everything literal that you're telling us? There's an expression.
Oh, come on. Right, literally. I use literally a lot. I do. I know, like, we'll go through my videos. I use literally for emphasis. Like, I'll go something like, it's literally this bad. This interview is literally so wrong. I use it more than actually, but I do use literally a lot. So for Candice to say literally, it's an emphasis word.
And we like to use, Vinnie and you at home. Truthful people convey. Liars try to convince. So we literally walked over here. Why the literally? Instead of we walked here, and then we walked here. Is she overselling at this point? That's a hot spot for me here. We literally walked. And then she said, we just went outside to play, or we just went downstairs.
I think she would use literally for emphasis because it was such a short walk. So, you know, you're like incredulous at thinking that a kid can disappear. Like when she's at grandma's camper and she went over to and Summer went over to the house. I think what we're missing from this timeline, from this script, is what happened after. Like, I think the lie that Candice told, I think, was that, you know, she said she went straight back over to the house from grandma's camper. I think she went over to the house but didn't check on Summer as quickly as she said. That's what I think. That's just personally what I think. Anyway, she says, right at the end, she said she's 60% sure that Candice is telling the truth.
So just as a minimizing word, so there are some verbal spots of stress and some nonverbal concerns I have, but this is not a 90% she's telling the truth. This is a 50-50, if not 60% telling you the truth. And riding that edge of 40%, there's more to the story.
All right. So she's 60% telling the truth, 40% there's more to the story. Okay. All right. I could actually go with that, actually. Actually. I think she's literally got on my nerves the whole interview, but actually, I do think there is more. I do think there is more to what Candice could say, but we don't know what she's told the cops. That's the same as chance. Yes, it is. 50-50. 50% chance that she's lying and 50% chance that she's telling the truth. Yeah, so she doesn't know. Basically, what we're hearing here is that this woman doesn't know, which is fine. I'm okay with her not knowing. What I have a problem with is people who try to sound like they know some stuff. They go on major TV networks pretending to know some stuff when what they've actually picked up on is very minor and doesn't take into account Candice's normal pattern of words that she uses. It doesn't take into account her education level. It doesn't take into account the stress that she's feeling at the time. That, yes, she is trying to convince Chris McDonell that she was literally there. And Summer was literally like 30 feet away when she went into the house. So it doesn't mean to say that Candice is lying. However, I personally believe that there's more to what Candice could say. And I hope that the cops have got the full story. And I think what Candace is missing out is the length of time that Summer was actually missing before she realised. I think that's her only flaw. And I think maybe, whether intentionally or not, Candace overestimated, or rather underestimated, the amount of time that she spent with Grandma. And I think she may have just sat in a chair outside and fallen asleep. Right? You know, she'd been busy that day. She might have just fallen asleep in a chair outside, or just gone in the house and sat down and fell asleep. And she doesn't know exactly when Summer disappeared. That, to me, is Occam's razor. And everything else is speculation. It's all speculation, obviously. But you have to go with the most likely scenario and exclude the most likely scenario first. You have to. Like, this is one of my favourite quotes. Arthur Conan Doyle. When you've eliminated all that's impossible, then whatever remains... Can you hear Tilly? Tilly! Tilly's found a victim. Start that again. When you've eliminated all that's impossible, then whatever remains, however improbable, must be the truth. I don't think we're able to eliminate... the most likely scenario, so we can't move on. We can't move on to the most improbable scenarios because we haven't eliminated what is the most probable. The most probable is that Summer left of her own volition and then either got lost and she's unfortunately had an accident and she's died and she just hasn't been found, or I think potentially, very likely in that area, she was abducted. Nothing can be eliminated. No, Mike, nothing can be eliminated. Nothing can be eliminated. That's why I even include the accident scenario. I even include the possibility that the parents are aware that Summer died. I don't think it's very likely, and I don't dwell on those theories nowadays, because I can't eliminate the most probable. And the thing that I always go back to is the footprints. How can we explain those footprints? How can we explain them? I've got a bunch of videos on the footprints. Go back and have a look. I've got a whole bunch of videos on the footprints because I can't explain those footprints. And until I get a full and reasonable explanation of why those footprints were there, where they were, on the properties that they were at, and the dog that alerted on them, until I've eliminated that, I cannot exclude the possibility that Summer was out wandering about. But where those footprints were, leads me to believe that someone took Summer there. So that's why the abduction scenario, the abduction by someone that either she knew or the parents knew, is my theory number one. And then my theory number two is that she wandered away on her own and no one else is involved. But how did she get up on that ridge on her own? How did she do that on her own? So because I can't eliminate the footprints, I can't move on. At this stage, in this case, three and some years later, I can't move on from those footprints. Still can't move on from those footprints. Anyway, guys, I've been on here nearly 2 hours, so I am going to go. No one else talks about the footprints. I know. And the footprints are just about the only piece of evidence we've got that Summer left that property. That's all we've got, that Summer left that property. And we know that that is the focus of where all the searches were. Maybe I should do another video on the footprints, like a recorded video, just going through the evidence of the footprints again. Because I know people don't often go back, you know, to a back catalogue of videos. You know, occasionally somebody might come across one if it, you know, YouTube throws it out in the algorithm somewhere. You know, people might see it then. But usually people don't go back to older videos, especially, you know, on a channel like mine where I make content every day. You know, people just get bogged down. You know, they want to watch the most recent video and they don't go back to older videos. So maybe I should do one more video just going through the evidence of the footprints. I'll do that. Dig deeper. Listen, I've dug about as deep as I possibly can on this case. I don't think I could go any deeper. I've gone through every possible scenario, except the really wild theories. I've not covered the really wild theories. A refresher. Yeah, let's do a refresher. So I'll do that. I do want to do Delphi tomorrow, though. I'd want to do Delphi geofencing. I could do a recorded video and a live stream, I guess, tomorrow. Would you like that? A refresher on Summer Wells and Delphi geofencing. Let's do that. I don't think I've got anything else on tomorrow, so I possibly could do that. Yeah, let's try. Let's try. I'm still working on the Lucy Letby video as well. I'm gathering all my research for the Lucy Letby video that I'm going to do. So I'm still in the research phase of that. I've gone down some proper good rabbit holes, though. But anyway, all right, guys, thank you for joining me once again. Thank you to the mods, as always. Thank you to those that donated towards the beginning of the live stream. Very, very appreciated. Very welcomed. And yeah, please leave a like before you go, because it does help. And if you do have social media, please do share this live stream or any video that you watch on my channel. Please do share it, because it tells YouTube that people are engaging and people are enjoying the content. So good stuff. It brings new people, new eyes. All right. So until tomorrow, I shall see you soon. Bye, guys.